Sound, when stretched, is music. Movement, stretched in rhythm, is dance. Mind, stretched, is meditation. And life, when stretched, is celebration.
For a problem which you haven't been able to solve, now you have got access to way more information as compared to when you were really conscious. And that's the reason why if you sleep with a problem, you might wake up with a solution. With conscious brain, you are able to control your voluntary muscles. But as you gain control over the subconscious brain with meditation, you start gaining control over involuntary muscles. The rate at which an animal breathes is inversely proportional to the number of years that animal lives.
Stress is something which is always perceived as a negative thing, but it wasn't always negative. It's inbuilt in us to help us. Meditation, with activating this parasympathetic nervous system and increasing the vagal tone, is what gives us this effect of it is causing us relaxation and all the benefits that you see with meditation, right?
The Western perspective of just considering meditation as a tool to fight stress seems to be underestimating the real power of meditation. And I think it might be an insult to the whole science of meditation just to say that it's a stress buster.
I feel the end product of people practicing meditation and realizing its benefit by themselves is more important. Now, what gets them to start the practice? Well, if for them, if it's like, okay, it helps you manage your stress better, and that's like, oh yes, I am stressed.
We have a lot of these meditation practices which basically slows down your thought. So when the thoughts slow down, basically the friction, the chances of friction is lesser, amount of inflammation is lesser, the stress goes down.
And just a subtle attention to our breath can bring us to the present moment, because we are not breathing for the past, we are not breathing for the future, we are breathing right now. And that is how we can bring ourselves to the present moment. We can manage our thoughts and reduce the stress.
I recently moved from India to US, and that movement has been very, very stressful. And a lot of people keep moving from one country to the other. Irrespective of that, our life has really become stressful in this modern world. Meditation is one of the key techniques that we know can reduce stress from our lives. And there is a huge science behind this process of meditation. For someone like me, it has been tough to start meditating, and I do require someone to inspire me and tell me exactly how to meditate. So today we have Rohan with us. So Rohan is a meditation teacher. He has great amount of experience in terms of teaching a specific form of meditation known as sky meditation, which is, I think, Sudarshan Kriya Yoga meditation. And in today's podcast, I'm really looking forward to learn from Rohan. How should I start meditating daily? I want to get inspired by him. And I also believe that through this conversation, the audience listening to this podcast will get inspired to start meditation. So welcome to the House of Royce. Rohan, let me start with your introduction to our listeners who might not have listened to previous podcasts by you.
Thank you so much, Subir. Hello, everyone. So again, as Subir mentioned, my name is Rohan Zaveri. I have been meditating now for about 15 years, and I'm teaching meditation since past year. And it started off with me, as Subir mentioned, as an activity or an exercise for myself, for mental hygiene, to manage my stress. And from that, I saw the amazing benefits it had on my life, and it motivated me to learn and share that benefit with others, and that started the journey of teaching others. And I'm so happy to talk more about my experience that meditation has on me and the effect that I've observed of it on others. So thank you, Subir, and happy to talk more on this.
Perfect. So, Rohan, I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of myself. I do not have any understanding of meditation. Whatever understanding I have is, I think, absolutely lame. Whatever knowledge I have about meditation is from whatever I read in few of the books, or maybe while listening to some podcasts, and I'm not sure whether my knowledge of this particular science, and I particularly call it as science, is correct or not. So let's start with what exactly is meditation.
That's it's a great question to start with. Well, to begin with, what is meditation, right? I think when we think about meditation from the West perspective, the Westerners look at it as a stress management technique. And I feel that's just looking at it from a very narrow scope. Yes, it is a stress management technique, and especially for the West perspective, when you see here, it's one of the societies which is overstressed and overworked, which has been shown in various research and surveys. So for a society like this, meditation, which brings relaxation, which helps you calm your nervous system down, does at the end help you reduce stress. So yes, that is a part of it that you can look at. And when I'm talking about stress, actually, let me take a pause here, right? And let us go back. Why is there this connection between stress and meditation in the first place? And this, I think, goes back a bit to the science, but I won't go much into that. Uh, let's go back to the olden days, right? So we go back to prehistoric times. Um, Stress is something which is always perceived as a negative thing, but isn't. It wasn't always negative. It's inbuilt in us to help us. So in the prehistoric times, when let's say men used to go for hunting or for whatever purposes, and if you see a lion in front of you, and at that point in time, a fight or flight response within you is activated. Your sympathetic system is activated. And what that does, that releases hormones in your body, stress hormone cortisol, that releases adrenaline, and that increases your heartbeat, that increases your blood pressure, makes your palms sweaty. It gives you that boost of energy to run away from that situation. Or maybe if it's a situation where you can fight, you fight. So it's an innate, uh, ancient response uh, that has been ingrained in us to help us fight such situations. Now, let's come to the present time. We are not wandering off in forest, hunting, or we are not encountering lions every minute, but that response of fight and flight is still with us. Now, what happens in today's time is it still gets activated. Our body cannot discern. It still gets activated whenever it sees that it's in a stressful situation. Now that stress could be anything. It could be deadlines from work. It could be stress from relationships. It could be stress by being stuck in traffic, right? These are some of the examples of normal stress in modern society. Now, when you encounter this stress, again, that cortisol is released, and that cortisol, increases your heartbeat. It increases your blood pressure, and its downwards effect then leads to negative effects on your body and on your nervous system. Now, if you look at it, I think I read this one study which said that in a day, our stress system in a modern society is activated 8 to 15 times. That is release of cortisol hormone once every 2 or 3 hours. And this is super detrimental, right? And this leads to obesity issues, issues with the gut, the continuous activation of sympathetic nervous system is the root cause of stress, anxiety, depression, mental issues, and also other issues in our body. Now, this is where, now why this was a whole build up to understand, okay, we have the sympathetic nervous system. Now, where does meditation come in? Well, from a science perspective, what meditation does, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, this is the system which is very important. It's also called the rest and digest system. And when we think of parasympathetic nervous system, the vagus nerve is very important. What meditation does, it increases the vagal tone. Now, vagus nerve is just quickly, it connects our brain to various parts of our body. And with meditation, what we are doing is we're increasing the vagal tone. And with increasing the vagal tone, what it does, it relaxes our heartbeat. It relaxes our blood pressure. It boosts our immunity. It activates our digestive system. And all of these processes, just apart with the effects it has on our body, it also relaxes our mind, brings us to the present moment. And when you see the effects of it, which has been documented and evidence-based, is enormous. And meditation with activating this parasympathetic nervous system and increasing the vagal tone is what gives us this effect of it is causing us relaxation and all the benefits that you see with meditation, right? So from a Western perspective, that is what meditation is. And that is how the science backs meditation.
Mhm. Okay, so you say from Western perspective, is there an Eastern perspective to this?
Yes, I mean, meditation is so much more to it. If you look at it from where it started, from ancient India and like the practice that I follow, uh, it's actually a way of connecting you to yourself.
Mhm.
It's bringing you to the present moment. It's a way of, um, you can call it connecting you to a higher power. To it is a way of your spiritual growth. So there is so much more layers within meditation that as you practice, as you go deeper into it, you understand it and you feel it. It's not something that you have to believe. It's something that once you do it, you experience it. So there are various layers to this.
Sure. Because, uh, as I said, I'm pretty much naive to the whole science of meditation, and I've been trying to read about it. But what I understood was that the Western perspective of just considering meditation as a tool to fight stress seems to be underestimating the real power of meditation. And I think it might be an insult to the whole science of meditation just to say that it's a stress buster. But is that perspective that I have correct?
See, I see where you're coming from, right? But look at it from this lens. We
Mhm.
have a modern society which predominantly believes in science and
Mhm.
wants to believe in stuff which are evidence based.
Mhm.
And if you come to them and tell them, do this technique, and it will do this, this, and this, it will connect you to yourself, it will lead you towards spiritual growth, it will bring you to present moment. You're like, what is all this nonsense, right?
Mhm.
You how can at the end of the day, why do we want, if someone is in stress, if meditation is something that can help them, or just in general it can help a mass population, I feel the end product of people practicing meditation and realizing its benefit by themselves is more important. Now, what gets them to start the practice? Well, if for them, if it's like, okay, it helps you manage your stress better, and that's like, oh, yes, I am stressed, right? If you give, it's like, it's understanding the need, right? If you go to a person who is hungry and you offer food to them, they'll value food. If you go to a person who is hungry and give them shelter, they're like, I don't want shelter. I don't even understand what shelter is. Shelter is. I'm hungry. Give me food. Right. So I think the concept that has started might be more of need based. If I look at it from that lens, that yes, here society is stress. For them, stress is the immediate, although it might be very looking at it from, as I said, very narrow lens, meditation is so much more than stress. But if that is an avenue for people to at least s- uh, start it and experience it, be open to it, then I think by them just doing it, it will expand itself, and they'll understand how much in-depth meditation is just more than the stress management.
Sure. No, I think I agree with what you're saying. And I, I, I do believe that from biological standpoint, stress is a kind of inflammation. So let me elaborate that. What is inflammation? Inflammation is basically friction whenever a process is happening, and in that process, when there is a mismatch between the way things are functioning and uh, the avenues which allow those things to function, when there is a friction between these two, it leads to generation of heat, and this heat will damage the entire system eventually. It's like when uh, you rub these two fingers, right? You are generating heat, and that is because there is friction between these two surfaces. Similarly, whenever any process is happening within our body, whenever it is happening smoothly, the friction is less. If it is not smooth, the friction is more. So lesser the smooth it is, more is the friction, more will
Yes.
be the damage that will happen to that particular system. And this biologically we refer to as inflammation, right? Now, when the thoughts, what we have, are not in concurrence with our lifestyle, with whatever is going on, when things are not, what do you say, smooth in our life, it will lead to stress. And that stress, to me, is kind of a psychological inflammation. So, even biologists refer to inflammation as biological stress. It's a cellular stress, right? And the only way of countering any kind of biological stress is to slow down that particular process. And that's the reason why, if you go to East, we have a lot of these meditation practices which basically slows down your thought. So when the thoughts slow down, basically the chances of friction is lesser, amount of inflammation is lesser, the stress goes down. We also do fasting, I think, from the same perspective, because the less you eat, less is the generation of energy, which means that the car, the motor of your car is not accelerating, which means that it is relaxing. If it is not moving, there is less friction. Uh, Stress goes down. Now, when I'm trying to explain effect of meditation in lowering stress via saying that stress is because of this inflammation, am I going in the right direction according to you?
Again, I feel there is, I think that's a unique perspective that you bring, and I've read your work on this and your blog about this, and I love it because as it is backed with science, it explains some of the reason why we have been practicing, in our ancient India, as you said, fasting, meditation. So I would say certainly, it explains it, it gives it a dimension to bring it back to our everyday life of why these practices exist and why we should incorporate it. So I don't think there is a wrong way, and what you said certainly it provides a unique perspective to it. I had never thought about. I think what's interesting to me is thinking about how thoughts, right, which is might be not as tangible, can also create friction. But it does if you look at it in that way, because everything. I don't want to go too much into it, but recently, last year, I think a physicist discovered that, well, the world doesn't exist. It's all vibrations and energy, if you look at it.
Yeah.
And what are our thoughts? They are vibrations, right? So it's, if when you align your thoughts, when you're able to calm your mind, and you are able to, I don't want to say control your thoughts, but can sort of manage the effects that the thoughts have on your body, then you're able to reduce that friction, and which in turn can reduce inflammation, stress, and all things downward.
Fair enough. I think, and there are substantial biological proof to it that each thought leads to inflammation. And the more you think, the more problem you create for your life. We always value knowledge, and knowledge is great. But I do not know which book I read where it is written that the best way of giving knowledge is to not go, is to not think about it a lot. Just be a seeker, but just don't keep on thinking and thinking and thinking. It's going to just destroy your mind. It's going to just create stress. You won't get anything out of it. It is said that knowledge is that poisoned apple which the Adam and Eve had, and that's brought entire troubles to the humanity as per the legend of Bible. But there is a scientific value to it.
And I mean, it's even so practical, right? If you just look at it right now, if you want to look at how thoughts affect your body, uh, any day, if you look at a particular day and if you observe your thoughts, you would see that you're either thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future. Now, when you think about the past, there are certain emotions that come up in your body. It might be, let's say, regret of why did I do this thing. It might be happy emotions because you look at a positive memory and you cherish that memory. And similarly, when you look about, let's say, future, the emotions that come into your body are might be anxiety because you're anxious about what might happen. There might be desires, that might be things that you're looking forward to. When your mind is swaying between this past and future and you have these emotions, that oscillation of your mind between this past and future is what causes stress, right? Because where is life lived? Right now, right?
Right now, absolutely. Yeah.
Life is lived in the present moment. And this goes back to why having so many thoughts can, lead to stress. But now the question arises, is how do you control your mind? Well, can you control your mind from the level of the mind? It's very difficult because it's like, let's say I say, you are on your bed, you are trying to sleep and you're not able to sleep. And you keep telling yourself, I want to go to sleep, I want to go to sleep. Does it work? It doesn't work, right? It's very difficult to control your mind from the level of the mind. And that is why we have these breathing techniques, we have meditations, which is such an easier way, right? Breathing, that's something that we have been doing as the first thing that we were born, and it will be the last thing that we'll do before we die. And just a subtle attention to our breath can bring us to the present moment because we are not breathing for the past, we are not breathing for the future, we are breathing right now. And that is how we can bring ourselves to the present moment. We can manage our thoughts and reduce the stress.
Wow. Good that you brought breath into this discussion, because when you are talking about meditation, you are trying not to think, or you are basically observing your thoughts, and eventually you want to have complete cessation of thoughts. But initially it might not be possible, but eventually as you meditate, as you go into the deeper levels of meditation, maybe. I have not witnessed, because as I told you, I'm still very early in terms of learning meditation. But I believe that people who go through different levels of meditation, they reach a phase where they do not get any thoughts. But initially, you will have a lot of thoughts, and that's when you say that you start by focusing on the breath. And the reason why I'm elaborating on this particular point is that when you are meditating and focusing on the breath, you force yourself to breathe slowly, isn't it?
Yes.
And I am again coming back to the previous point I was trying to make, that as you slow down the processes, the inflammation actually comes down. And this is seen in nature. For example, the breathing rate of tortoise is extremely low. It is one of the slowest animals we know from the tortoise and the hare story. And yet, tortoise lives for
Much
more than
stronger.
a century. However, the faster the breathing rate is, as we have seen with, let's say, hummingbird doesn't live, I think, for more than a decade. It dies off, and it has got a very high breathing rate. Uh, so, at least in the world of animals, the rate at which an animal breathes is inversely proportional to the number of years that animal lives. And we are also animal. I think it equally makes sense that for us, if we reduce the pace at which we breathe, inflammation goes down. You will tend to live longer if you're meditating on a regular basis.
Wow, I love that perspective. Um, and I mean, there's so much, it's you see it as the examples that you gave, you see it in nature, and it's I think a living proof of how managing your breath can has benefits. And I just wanted to say one thing. I know you mentioned before about how meditation and breath work uh, can lead to no thoughts. And I just want to clarify this because for someone, since I've been teaching meditation, I know a lot of people say that, well, I've tried meditation, but I still get thoughts, right? And for someone who is starting meditation and has been just, is a beginner in this, it's very important to understand that meditation is not trying to get to cessation of thoughts, right?
Okay.
It's because if you look at it, right, what is the function? It's like telling you the function of your gut is to digest food. The function of your heart is to beat. Now, the function of your mind is to think, right? So we are not here trying to say don't think.
Mhm.
And when you say something not to do it, whatever you resist, it persists. It's a law of the mind. Whatever you try
Sure.
not to do, it will do that, right? If I ask you right now to close your eyes and not think of a pink elephant, what will you think of?
Pink elephant.
A pink elephant, right? So exactly, it's not that you shouldn't have thoughts. What meditation is it helps you to understand, to observe the thoughts as like clouds moving through the sky. Because what we tend to do is when we have some thoughts of past or future, we try to cling on to that, and that takes us to a spiral, and that leads to stress. So, what meditation is trying to do is, well, thoughts are coming and they are going, and you just let them pass. You be an observer to the thoughts, and that in itself can stop from you swaying to past and future and bring you to the present moment. So that is what meditation does. And I think at the end of it, if you are an avid meditator, then yes, you can get to a place where you don't have thoughts. But I wouldn't want to say it for someone who's trying to do meditation, because then they always are like, well, this is not working for me because I'm still getting thoughts.
Sure. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, the reason why there are a lot of meditation techniques that use accessories like the beads, or they will do japa, or they will have some mantras. Uh, I always thought that this is to keep your mind busy upon a particular chain of thoughts, which are reinforced by those mantras or japas, so that additional thoughts don't come. And it's a way of suppressing additional thoughts. Is it right way of looking at why these uh, uh, tools are used by beginners, or even I think by professionals as well?
Yes, I mean, definitely it's a way. Let's say when we have, right? At this point, we have apps, right? You use Calm app, we have Headspace. They offer guided meditation. Now, what does a guided meditation do? If you try to sit by yourself and meditate for 5 to 10 minutes, you will be bogged down by your mind running everywhere because you haven't done that. So when someone guides you, gives you prompts, your mind goes to that sound, right? And that helps you then to follow those instructions and go into that meditative space. Similarly, it could be, as you said, mantra. What that does, it takes you back to that. So you could have all these thoughts coming to your mind, but as you take that mantra, it takes you back to that, and it brings you to, to, it could be, let's say, to your breath. You focus on your breath, it brings you again back, your mind comes back, detaches from those thoughts and come back to the present. So they are all there as a different form of how you can, this is what I think, how you can detach yourself from those thoughts that your mind is having and come back to the present moment.
Interesting. I remember I read a book by Swami Vivekananda, I guess, time back. I think I was a kid at that point in time, where it said that when you are meditating, or even normally, your mind is like a drunk monkey. Uh, so it is completely intoxicated with desires. And then, so as you meditate, that's what the book says, as you meditate, you will have all the desires troubling your mind in form of different thoughts. And then, so that's the intoxication. And then you are stung by the scorpion, and it's a metaphorical scorpion of jealousy. So the next level of thoughts that's going to come to you are those of jealousy, because you have desire about having something and somebody else possesses that. So you get those thoughts. So you get stung by the scorpion. And I think the third stage is where you are uh, completely engulfed by the demon of your ego, where you think that you are all powerful and this is what you deserve, this is for you, and all these thoughts start troubling you as you try to suppress the thoughts and go into deeper realms of meditation. So I think in that book he says that that's the reason why most of the meditation has to start with something called as dharana, where you need an object, where you concentrate upon the object. And then the next stage is dhyana, where you, instead of object, you focus on yourself, uh, which is extremely difficult. And people who surpass that, they can then go towards the last stage, which is samadhi. Yeah, but uh, I think those what the yogis do, and not for idiot souls like
No, that's, and I think if if you look at it from our ancient perspective, definitely the last stage of samadhi, uh, the epitome of meditation that you can call it. But as you said, it's something, it's not for us. As beginners, I would also consider myself as learning. And although I've been practicing for a while, it's each experience is different. Every day, I have a different experience, and so I'm also learning. I wouldn't call myself an expert in this at all.
no, some of the concepts which these learned men bring about, those are, I mean, I get extremely curious what exactly they mean biologically, and there are a lot of these biological sense which it makes. So, for example, I think it's the same book by Vivekananda which talks about three columns in our spine. You have got Ida, and then uh, Pindara, and
Pingla,
then
Pingla,
Pingala.
Pingla.
Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna.
Sushumna, yes,
Sushumna is in middle, and then you've got
yes,
Ida on one side and Pingala on the other side. So when you have reached the second level, uh, you are your Ida and Pingala, they are stabilized, and these are actually electrical currents, and it makes
yes,
sense because this is exactly how our spinal cord is. You have got all those nerve plexuses, all right, which are accumulated at different levels of spine, and then from each of the foramina between two vertebrae, the nerves are coming and supplying all the parts of our body. It's amazing how the Vedic sciences try to describe
Yes.
the same thing from a very different perspective. And then you've got the hollow spinal cord. It's not exactly hollow, of course, but then it says that if you reach the last stage, or then you get currents flowing through the what is that? The middle one, Ida Sushumna. It
Sushumna
then starts,
Nadi.
yeah,
Yes.
whatever. So I do not know about these concepts, but I just read and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
And it's, I mean, when you look at our ancient science, it's so wonderful how precise it was, because I was reading how, like, medically, right now, now we have these tools, we have x-rays, we have these surgeries, but in those olden days, 2000 3000 years ago, they have pictures which showed different layers of the womb when a woman gets pregnant, right? They had surgical tools which could divide a hair strand into two. They were so precise. And even when you look at our nervous system and our body, you mentioned those nadis. And when we do practices that we do now, which is alternate nostril breathing technique, or you call anulom
Yeah.
vilom, which is done so that you sort of engage those nadis, your Sushumna nadis, and those are basically what we are referring to now as the vagus nervous system. You're trying to activate that vagus nervous system. So it's very interesting that I feel, and it's also something that I don't know, some of my friends believe it more when they hear it from the modern perspective. But then when you realize, well, the ancient text has already shown this, right? But it's just that our knowledge of it has either we don't know about this, or there is this lack of, uh, you know, validation from that, oh, we don't believe it unless you hear it from a scientist who publishes it in a paper. What is your perspective on this? What do you think? Because I want to ask you, because you are a medical doctor, right? You have learned allopathy, but as you said, you are so well learned also on Ayurveda and the ancient practice. How do you see this?
Wow. We are digressing a bit, but I'm happy to digress. Uh, so I was always a staunch follower of Western medicine, always. All right. I did my MBBS, I did my postgrad, I went into R&D, and I was always a staunch supporter of Western medicine. I was like, if there is an evidence, only then it is proven, else it does not exist, or I'm not going to believe it, and things like that. However, certain things you do not need evidence at all to say that it was known long back and it did not come from Western science. So forget about medicine. The theory of gravity, everybody says that it came from Newton because hypothetically he saw some apple falling and then he came up with theory, the law of gravity or whatever. It's nonsense because the word Gurutwakarshan
Yes.
existed long before, I mean, centuries before even Newton was born.
Yes.
So we have some of these things already known to us, that we knew all these things even before Newton came in. Anyways, coming to medicine, as I said, I always was a staunch believer of Western medicine. I always thought that, what, this Ayurveda and these are all nonsense, bakwas, what, all jadi booty you eat, and nobody knows what's happening. It's just some mystic, magical thingy which is being propagated just to earn money by fooling others. That's what I used to believe. Until I started reading a book called Ashtanga Hridayam. Ashtanga Hridayam is actually one of the oldest treatises on Ayurveda written by someone known as Vagabhata. All right.
Okay.
Now, when I read that particular book, I was astonished the amount of understanding those guys had about genetics. The whole point of Gotra system, when I myself always believe that Gotra system is something which should be banned. You should not it's a society killer or whatever. All right, it is an injustice. I used to believe that until I read about that in depth, and I then started applying my knowledge of genetics and like, wow. I mean, if you go to Israel, there you always marry someone who is your cousin. That's how the Ashkenazi Jews have been following. All right, their religious practices force them to always marry very close uh, brothers or sisters, all right, or cousins. Now, that led to a lot of genetic diseases, what we know about, like Gaucher disease and things like that. And here in India, we had something called as Gotra system. Gotra system simply said that within the same Gotra, don't marry.
Yes.
All right. Because those Gotras,
And lineage.
they are lineage, they are Y chromosome lineage.
Yes.
And that's the reason why the male names are carried forward. It's not because of some societal male dominating kind of a philosophy. It was just that it's easier to track the Y chromosome when X and X, X and X, when they come, sorry, X and X and X and Y, when they come together, it's difficult to track the X, right? But it's very difficult to track the Y.
Yes.
Y will remain constant. It will go on and on and on. It doesn't get polluted so long as you are maintaining the Gotra. The moment you marry within the same Gotra, you have got higher chances of genetic defects coming together, autosomal recessives, they will come together and then you'll have genetic defect manifested. This is about genetics, and they knew that long back. We had no idea. They knew about sperm, they knew about the ova, they knew. So forget about all those things. I am speaking too fast, I'm speaking so many things, but and I know that this is a topic which is way away from meditation, where we started, but let me explain this small thing with medicine. The food we eat right now, whatever food we eat, that food is something which is good for you might not be good for me. So, for example, I'm a Bengali. My ancestors, for thousands and thousands of years, they have been eating fish and rice because they grew up in a land where these were available, right? We had
Yes.
coconut, we had fish, we had rice, we had mustard. This was the staple diet. And we know by Darwin's theory of evolution that we adapt for the environment where we are growing. So evolutionarily, my body has adapted over the centuries to eat fish and rice and not paratas. And not paratas. Okay. So if I eat paratha, it might lead to gluten insensitivity, hypersensitivity, whatever. Okay. But I continue eating fish and rice, I'm good. No problem for me. But for a Punjabi, it's the reverse thing.
Yes.
If that guy leaves parathas and goes for fish and rice, it will be a problem.
Problem.
And Ayurveda, Ashtanga Hridayam, actually talks about these aspects that depending on where you were born, you should eat the food from that particular land, and that digestion will have least resistance. You will have least inflammation. And again, it changes from season to season. So what is good for you in summer might not be good for you in winter. All right. So everything is interconnected, and you have to be mindful of these things so that the inflammation is less. If there is mismatch, there will be inflammation. Now, why I'm saying this is, in Western medicine, we do clinical trials with medicine, right? We give a medicine. And the underlying assumption over there, unsaid underlying assumption, is that my body is going to process the same medicine in every season,
Yes.
in any time of the day, exactly the same way. How? How is this possible? It is not possible. And that's the reason why you for the same medicine, you will have different clinical trials showing absolutely opposite results. It might not be true for all medicines, by the way, but we have got several cases like this where same you are trying to test the same thing. One clinical trial is showing something else, other clinical trial is showing a very opposite result. And that's because the assumptions are actually wrong. And the other thing, what we do with Western medicine is that we use biostatistics, which is great, of course, for because you are studying a large population, and from
Yes.
that you are deriving inferences. But tell me one thing: you are a student of science, right? How logical is it to derive conclusions from population statistics and apply into an individual?
Mhm.
Because it is a matter of probability
Yes.
when you're talking about population statistics. When I apply it to myself, will it be true? I can never be sure. So, anyways, let me pull myself back from my over enthusiasm on these topics and bring back the topic of meditation. I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, I just hearing about your passion on this, Subir, and I think everyone hearing this needs to know. Although we are sort of deviating, meditation is talking about the science that ancient India had, and all these things that we talked about goes back to that ancient science, and goes back to the point of we believe things right now because we hear it from a different source, and sometimes we end up believing that this is the source and we neglect what our rich history and what the richness we have in our culture, just knowing about that, right? And you read that book that made you aware about this, right? And I think you said that that's changed your perspective, that oh, it's not just allopathic medicine, there is this science and this medicine which is also valid. So I think the awareness of it needs to be spread, and that is what we are doing here. So I know we digressed, but I think it was a good digression point to have.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yes.
All right. So let me bring a question so that we can bring our conversation back to meditation. Okay. So uh, when you are teaching meditation to a new student or somebody who wants to learn meditation, what are your first steps in the sense so that that person really adopts meditation in the right way?
Great question. So before we go into how I teach it, let me just take a step back and help people understand what do I teach, right? And
Uh-huh.
how do I get into teaching this? So, well, I'm teaching a technique which is called sky breath meditation. And Sky, SKY, stands here for Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. And I got to know about this technique so this technique was you know, uh, founded by Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, who is the founder of Art of Living organization. He is world-renowned humanitarian. He's the ambassador of mental health well-being, and he created Art of Living Foundation, and he created this technique. And so I got to learn this technique, and it's a rhythmic-based breathing exercise. So that is what I teach. And I teach it in a 3-day workshop.
Mhm.
Usually it's about 3 hours each day. And how we start by doing is first understanding breath, right? What is the power of breath? Why are we breathing? We start with doing pranayams. We start with learning different breathing techniques, and then we slowly go into uh, the sky breath, and then going into the meditation. So it's you don't want to just push someone and just start meditating, right? It's for someone who has not done it, it's difficult. They need to also comprehend it, that why am I doing it? They need to understand the effects of it. And the reason why I'm saying it, like if we look back at it in 19th century, what was the worldwide prevalent disease? It was gingivitis. And why was it
Ah,
prevalent? Because there was no concept of dental hygiene at that point.
Mhm.
Now, if you look at 21st century, what is the worldwide prevalent disease?
Diabetes, maybe?
Diabetes, and it's one of the most prevalent diseases. It's diseases related to mental health, depression.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
One in seven people in the world suffer from depression. And why is that? Because I believe there is no concept of mental hygiene. Did were you and me taught in school? We were taught how to brush our teeth twice a day. Were we taught how to brush our mind? And what I mean by that is, were we taught how to, practice how to take care of our mind, take care of our thoughts? We weren't, right? We weren't taught about the concepts of mental hygiene. And that is what has led to the current epidemic that you can call, which has led to mental health diseases. So we have a need, we have a huge cause and a platform to spread awareness about meditation and breathing exercise and all sort of exercise related to this, and that is why it's important. The reason I feel, for me, why we are talking about this is right now is to understand the importance of it, to spread awareness about it, and the need about it. I feel everyone, you and me, even if, and when whoever I talk to about meditation, they're like, yes, we have heard about it, it has so many benefits, but I don't know if it's for me, right? And I want to especially reach out to those people and talk with them and help them understand it, right? Because when I start teaching meditation, uh, I would have talked to so many people, and every time I think one in five or one in three would be like, I don't think this is the right time for me to do it. I think meditation is something that, people do when they get old, or, it's not something for me right now. Let me enjoy my life. But then these are the people who, after, I don't know, after 2 months, 3 months, some after 6 months, would come back to me that I know one of my friends who did this and they have changed completely and I want to try it, right? Uh, I just want them to experience what meditation is. And I think this is a perfect moment. What if we take a couple minutes right now and just go through a guided meditation? I feel people who are listening to this or who will listen to this later can just take this moment to experience for 5 minutes what meditation is. What do you think about this, Subir?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so we'll do a very simple thing. We'll do a guided meditation session for 5 minutes. You don't have to do anything. Just wherever you are seated, sit comfortably and easily. You can keep your spine erect. You can put both your hands, relax them, put your arms and rest them on your thighs, and just stay seated comfortably. You can close your eyes and take a normal deep breath in and breathe out. Take another deep breath in and let go. Become aware of the environment around you. Noise of fan, traffic, people talking. Accept all the noises. Take a deep breath in and let go. Become aware of your feet, your knees, become aware of your entire leg, become aware of your abdomen, your chest, your fingers, elbows, your entire arm, become aware of your shoulders. Take a deep breath in and breathing out, drop your shoulders and relax. Become aware of your neck, your face, your head. Become aware of your entire body. Take a deep breath in and breathing out, relax your whole body. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. Another breath in and let go. Observing the state of your mind now. Slowly and steadily, you may open your eyes.
Wow.
How do you feel now?
That was now I feel I don't know. It feels surreal. It feels uh, so I have to admit I had super chains of thoughts interrupting me while the meditation was going on. There was a time when I really lost you, and then I brought myself back while you were guiding. But yeah, I meditated after a long time, but this is nice.
And this was just, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or 7 minutes that we did. A
Hmm.
very short, quick meditation. But every time that I have, I do this myself and I have guided it, there's something different that people feel, like in themselves, that they haven't noticed before. It's a certain sense of calmness, it's a certain sense of relaxation. They have so many thoughts going in their brain, as you said, while doing the meditation, but when they have their eyes closed and when they open, something shifts, right? So that state of your mind that you just went into, I don't know, for a glimpse of a second, it is that state when you meditate, right? When you do this as a practice daily, that is what you're expanding. And I
Mm.
love this quote by this regarding meditation. Um, and Sri Ravi Shankar, it's a quote by him. He says, "Sound, when stretched, is music. Movement, stretched in rhythm, is dance. Mind, stretched, is meditation. And life, when stretched, is celebration."
Wow.
And I think that that captures it, right? Very beautifully of all aspects of, the music, the dance, the meditation, and the celebration.
Yeah. No. I had a question at this point, a little divergent question on this topic only. So when at least from the last 5, 6 minutes experience of meditating, of course, I feel super relaxed. It's extremely nice. You feel fresh. A similar kind of thing happens when you're doing something which you love doing. So I never reached the flow state, but I'm sure that a lot of people reach that, especially the painters who love painting what they paint or whatever. I sometimes reach a similar kind of situation when I'm doing a research on some favorite topic of mine or whatever. I just forget how much time has gone into it or whatever. But when I come out of it, I have a very similar feeling what I'm having right now in terms of the calmness. There is um, some pleasantness. I'm not able. It's not happiness. You're not laughing about it, or uh, you're not really dancing about it or whatever. But it's a subtle happiness. What you have uh, is flow similar to meditation? That's the question I wanted to ask. Being in a flow state.
I think that's a very interesting question, and I have heard about this very similar thing. I think you gave an example of painting. I've heard about people who climb mountains. They are mountain climbers. Uh, they have each and every movement that they make while climbing a mountain has to be so precise, has to be so perfect. But in that state, when they are doing it, their level of awareness, and when they go into that state, for them it feels like meditation, right? You know what you say, when time, you don't know how much time has passed by doing this, that ecstasy that you experience within yourself. So I think this is where I haven't, I don't know if I'm capable enough to make that, like, what is that? But I think it is serving the purpose, which is you are completely focused in doing that. Your mind is completely present. You're not having any thoughts in your brain while doing that particular activity, which you so love, which you're so passionate to do, that it takes you to that meditative state. So yes, I would say it, you can consider it as meditation, right? About doing the thing that you love doing.
Yeah. The other thing where I made this correlation earlier was, again, it came from one of the books where I read that if you meditate properly, it's okay not to even sleep, because the kind of relaxation you get from meditation is far more richer as compared to what you get from sleep. Because when you're sleeping, your thoughts are actually not under your control at all. I mean, they just bombard you. You just don't know about it. It's only during that NREM sleep you're aware of those thoughts. Else you just lose that awareness, but those thoughts are actually bombarding you. So the sleep is not the best way of getting complete relaxation. Meditation is, it's much more richer form. And why I'm saying this is, or why I made the correlation between flow and flow state and meditation, is that sometimes when I'm this near flow state, I never reached flow, honestly, because I am aware that I'm doing something. They say that when you're in flow, you're not actually aware, you're just doing it. The time has gone. It's only when you're out of it you realize that, oh, so much of time has gone. So I have not reached that state. But whenever I'm doing something which I really love doing, and I'm in near flow state, when I have little gap of understanding how much time has gone, even if I don't sleep, I'm completely fresh after that. I'm like, well, I don't need sleep. It's fine. I can just go for work and be fresh. In fact, I'll be fresher than my normal sleep. So I wanted to check. There are a couple of these correlations between flow and meditation. Are those known, or is it just some illusion from my end?
So again, as you said, I personally haven't, similar to you, haven't experienced a flow state. So I don't think I'm qualified enough to comment on what the flow state is and how similar it is to meditation. But I do want to make a point from what you made earlier, is how a small time meditating can give you relaxation. Like 30 minutes of meditation can give you a relaxation equal to 2 hours of sleep, right? And I think there's a lot of research done into it. There's different waves, the alpha, beta, delta, and when you go into meditations, you're going into the delta waves, and that's also going into, it's giving you that deep relaxation, but also you're going into that phase, you're tapping into your subconscious potential, right? You're not unconscious, right? You're not fully conscious. You're between the state of conscious and unconscious. Now, if some also define that as the stage where you are, when you are in meditation. And that is the stage where creativity happens. And that's why when you look at studies that are done and even real life examples of people where they get all these amazing ideas when they are meditating, right? And that's because going into that phase. Now, is that similar to someone who is in that flow state and is also going into that, is into the same delta waves and tapping into the same subconscious potential? I'm not sure, but it does sound similar to them going into meditation. I don't know if there has been a relationship established between those two states. I don't even know if they are different from each other, right? Is the person who is so engrossed in this particular activity going into a meditative state? Is that it? Or is that a different state that they are going into? So I'm not too sure. I would come back to you, Subir, here as to what do you think about this? Are they two different things that we are talking about, or are they at the core of it one thing, but the technique to reach to that has is different.
Yeah, yeah. I have no idea. As you have been talking about meditation, uh, I realized that I should mention this correlation that I have observed. But as I said, my personal experience with meditation is quite limited. So I am not an expert to make any such conclusive comments on this part. That's the reason why I thought I will ask your opinion.
Yeah, I think it's something to continuously ponder on, and maybe one day I can come back and tell you, Eureka, I figured it out.
No, but it's quite an interesting point that you bring in terms of creativity that comes in when you are between the realm of conscious and unconscious, that subconscious realm. And from neurobiology, what we do know is that when we are awake, we so everything what we do is from the survival point of view, whether it consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, everything is for survival of this body. All right. And brain is the best adapted organ for survival because what it does is that it integrates all the information from around and then makes a sense out of it. All right. So whatever I see, whatever I smell, whatever I hear, the brain is getting all these information from the sensory organs, right? And it gets integrated and then it makes conclusions what to do about this information. Is there a survival advantage I can get out of it? Each time it is trying to evaluate it, right? And that's the reason why it tries to minimize the noise from the information. It has to know because it's like millions of bytes of information coming every second. So it has to make sure that it collects rich information and kind of forget or lose the noise, right? Now, so for example, we if you compare us with maybe a bear, okay, a bear can smell things more than what we can, way more. A dog can smell things way more than we can. An eagle can see things more than what we can. A bat can hear things that we cannot, right? But then we don't need those things. Those are noise for us. For us, what is important is we need rich information. And that's the reason why myopia, which is short sightedness, is okay for us because we don't need that distant vision. For me, your facial expression is more important than what is happening 1 mile away from me. It's not important. It's not going to impact my survival. My survival is dependent on how I read your facial expressions. And that's why myopia is okay. It's actually powerful. So our whole adaptation of the body has been to complement the brain towards survival. So our nose is not that powerful, but it actually senses smell, which is really important for me to understand, uh, for me to process. Similarly, I hear only those frequencies which are really important for me to form associations with the other person. The rest of the sounds, the ultrasonic or the supersonic sounds, are not important for me for my survival, right? What I'm trying to say is that when we are conscious, brain is making extremes or taking extreme steps to make sure that only that information is kept, which is important for it, and lose out all the noisy information which is not going to help it. How does it determine which information is noisy and which information is relevant? It's basically based on patterns. So kid's brain is like a blank canvas. It does not know how to differentiate what information is important and what information is not. But over a period of time, it realizes that some information has got more relevance to the survival and some information does not, based on experiences. And that's the reason why we have got biases. Biases arise from this. We look at someone and we make a judgment immediately. We do it subconsciously. Immediately, brain makes a judgment. This is how the person is. And we know that, yeah, it's wrong to make a judgment. But if you have to make a decision within a flick of a second, that judgment is mostly correct based on past experiences. In the long run, yeah, it's bad. I mean, I cannot judge you based on how you look like, right? It has to be based on quality conversation with you. But let's say I've got only 5 minutes to take a call. I will go back to my bias, and that bias has come based on whatever brain has experienced throughout the lifetime. It has made those judgments, right? So these biases are the ones which guide brain to tell what information to keep and what information to ignore when we are conscious. Unfortunately, a lot of this information which is ignored by the brain based on past experience might hold keys towards
Hmm.
answering certain problems which we hadn't answered earlier, which we weren't able to solve earlier. Brain won't know it. Brain is working based on its past experiences. So it has ignored a few information. But when we go into that subconscious realm, the information is not lost. It's just that the brain is ignoring it. It's there hidden. But when you are in that state of losing your conscious brain, moving towards subconscious, suddenly those pieces of information start emerging from that sea of thoughts. And that's when, for a problem which you haven't been able to solve, now you have got access to way more information as compared to when you were really conscious. And that's the reason why if you sleep with a problem, you might wake up with a solution. And so it's true with meditation, I guess, because you are going into subconscious level, you are able to tap in way more information which were earlier not available to your brain because it was trying to ignore that a piece of information because the way the brain functions. It has to ignore those. It cannot take in all information. It will simply get exhausted. So I think you're
Wow.
right. I mean, when you're meditating, you will come up with creative solutions.
I mean, I knew the end aspect of it, but the way you have connected it, uh, this was mind blowing, Subir. I love the the aspect that you brought with how a sensory overload is managed by the brain and why it is said. I think the old saying that if you sleep over it, you might, as you said, wake up with an answer. So there is some logic behind that or science behind that of sleeping over it. But I wasn't aware about this whole aspect. So this is this is beautiful. I think that it would so much more. I feel it puts so much more, not just credibility, but understanding behind of why we say that the subconscious holds that potential. It's because the answers lie there. It's just that we, to function, are not comprehending those. But when you go into that state, you're able to see that and comprehend all that information, which can help you answer.
Sure. There is a flip side to this entire process, though. What I was saying about our brain having access to certain information when it is conscious and certain information that is when it is not conscious, there is a huge flip side to it. So for example, in case of schizophrenia,
Hmm.
the access to information is way higher. The conscious brain loses its ability to filter information. It has got too much of information to handle, and that's the reason why you'll find them having these manic episodes, the schizophrenic patients. There are a lot of texts, and I don't think those are scientific texts, but they suggest, and it might be a conspiracy theory, that a schizophrenic brain can perceive things what a normal person cannot. They live in a dimension at least from the thoughts perspective, which are way above what we can really understand, because they have access to that information what a conscious brain doesn't have. And this also happens when you take a hallucinogen, what do you call it? Hallucinogenic drug or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, hallucinogenic drug.
Hallucinogenic drug, it's exactly the same principle. It just kills the filter. There is a
Mm.
filter which is suppressing a lot of these thoughts which are not useful from survival perspective. That filter is removed. And that's why in some cases, especially I think with LSD intoxication, you can smell sound, you can hear colors. It's amazing when you hear their experiences because the filter is gone. The distinction between one set of information and the other, even that's lost. So it's yeah, go on.
The this gives me another thought because what you just mentioned made me realize. So it all comes back from patterns, right? We are understanding
Yes.
it's a blank canvas that's being painted as we are, growing. So it would be interesting. I don't know if you already know about this. What if we take a newborn baby and we expose them to a completely different environment other than what a human is exposed to, and see, I mean, it would not be ethical, but to see in their growth, how are they perceiving things? To
By the way, you don't have to do it. It's already it has happened. So, for example, if you go to the indigenous tribes of certain lands, the babies born in those tribes, they are exposed to situations which are very different from what we are exposed to. So when they are walking, they can understand where which animal is.
Mhm.
We do not have those senses, but they have. By just looking at the landscape, they determine where you can find the food or which tree will have the right fruit or things like that. Their patterns have been developed in a very different way. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of a AI kind of a thing, right?
What
Which is
you
going
put
on.
it, yes, yes.
So you have one piece of information, and then what you do with that piece of information is going to give you either positive result or negative result. If it is negative result or positive result, both are important for me to understand because it's helping me to survive. But if there is a piece of information which is useless, it neither leads to anything positive, neither leads to anything negative, I need not remember it, forget it. By the way, this is not only with the brain, it's also with the immune system of our body. Forget about the brain, even with the immune system. So for example, you get a viral infection which is extremely dangerous, which is causing a lot of inflammation. Okay, your body creates antibodies, and those antibodies are long lasting. But if you get a viral infection which is extremely mild, all right, so it is neither positive experience nor negative experience, it's doing nothing to you, your body simply prepares the antibodies but then forgets about it, so that those antibodies are not long lasting. So that's the reason why a lot of vaccines, they come with adjuvants to create inflammation along with the vaccine. So you give the
Yes.
virus, but you create inflammation along with it. That adjuvant is actually a poison, all right? But because it creates inflammation, you fool the body to feel that it's the virus which is creating a lot of damage. So you create a long-lasting memory. So what do you see in the brain? So it's very interesting. Brain is an extension of a normal cell. So everything which is happening in the brain will happen similarly with every cell in our body. The process remains the same. Remember, everything came from one single cell. It grew from one single cell and then we became this, right? So brain is an extension of that cell into a specialized function. But the concept behind how it's going to function remains common as a principle throughout all cellular architectures. And that's why immune system looks exactly like a brain memory. There is no difference.
Wow. I mean, that it's
Now,
magnificent.
yeah, but here is, so till now it's science, and here is where uh, I I feel uh, that I do not have right words to explain this. So what I explained to you was that because we are derived from a single cell, whatever philosophy of cellular organization processes exist in that cell, the same gets translated to all the cells in our body, except that they become more specialized in case of brain towards information processing.
Yes.
They become more specialized towards toxin metabolism when it comes to liver or whatever, right? But the basic principle remains the same, correct? Now, moving back to the Eastern philosophy, okay? I said we all came from one single cell and that became multicellular. Big Bang theory says, as per the Western philosophy, that there was a single point where everything started and it was a big bang. Eastern philosophy also says the same thing, all right, that there was a single point from which everything erupted, everything came out. And that's what the Eastern philosophy calls as consciousness, right? So the consciousness of that one single point exists with every
Each and
living
every one.
matter and non-living being across, and we are all connected with that consciousness. The principle remains the same. So if you look into any of the tribal cultures or ancient Mexican culture, or you go to South American cultures, they all talk about this connection between us and the plants and the animals, because basically they evolved from the same speck of dust. So they are all connected through the same philosophy. So till the cell part, I was scientific and I became mystical in terms of explanation. I understand that, but then the correlations are very similar, no?
Yes. It's so interesting. We were both thinking along the same lines. When you said that's the extension of the cell is what leads to the body, and I was like, the extension of the body is, as you said, it's the universe. It's not just limited to the earth. It's all a similar consciousness, as we can, as you want to call it. I was thinking along the same lines, and you put it perfectly, that if you look at it from an instant perspective, we are all related. And this reminds me of a TED talk that I watched, which was telling how is everything related. And it talked about many different, four different examples of how we are all related. But I remember a couple, and I want to share one of them, which was uh, through breath, how we are all related. And the way it said that was millions of years ago, the earth had no living matter, right? And then slowly and steadily, there were single cell organisms, uh, there were microbes, and then there was this microbe that started in the ocean, started taking carbon dioxide and converted into oxygen. And these were I forget the name of those microbes. I'm missing it. I'm I'm missing the name right now. It's at the tip of the tongue, but I'm missing it. But it took them another million years of continuously doing it to increase the level of oxygen in the atmosphere to a certain level that formed the ozone layer. And once the ozone layer were formed, that created an environment that led to generation of more life. Now, that initial microbes that were creating these oxygen that get evolved into plants, and that cell is what is in the plants, which we now call as chloroplast, right? Which is doing that process of converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. And over this millions of years now, we have a earth which we are all in, which we all are living in, us, animals, and everyone. And the oxygen that we are breathing was developed by that single cellular cell millions of years ago, and it took them millions years to take it to a certain level. And now we have these plants that are breathing, and we are breathing it. We all are breathing it, right? So at a level of breath, we are all connected. The breath you are having, the breath I am having, the breath animals are having, it all goes back to that. So at a breath level, we are all connected. And then it also gives another example of and this is about how the iron that we get. So we have hemoglobin. Now, hemoglobin at its core has iron. Now, where does this iron come from? And he connected it all the way back to the stars. And there is over the galaxy and the way the stars are built, every time a star is built and the star is destroyed, the iron that we have in our body, in the blood, in our hemoglobin, actually comes from there. That is the source of that iron. So, and we all have that. So and you can watch this TED talk if you just Google everything is connected. I think you'll see this, and it's mind blowing. The examples that he's sharing, and these are now more scientific, but that just makes you realize that those ancient concepts, again, going back to the Eastern medicine, when we say at the level of consciousness, we are all connected. I think this provides more objective evidence for people, for us to comprehend, because there are certain things when you go mystical, it's hard to comprehend it. So this
Sure.
gives us something to latch on to, that, oh, this is something we can see and we can understand.
No, beautiful. No, this is beautiful. Actually, there is a book called uh, Genome by Matt Ridley. Have you read that book?
No.
Okay, so it's a beautiful book. Uh, the book cover itself is amazing. It has got uh, 23 chromosomes carved out. Okay, and it has got 23 chapters inside it, and it talks about a very similar kind of connection what you're talking about, where it says that probably life started as a virus, as it started as, so you needed a nucleic acid to start life. Otherwise, you will not be able to propagate. The the only way a cell is going to replicate is via replicating the genetic system. Any cell, if a cell does not have genome, it just cannot replicate, right? Because a cell will live only because the information which is written in the genome is getting uh, transcripted and translated, and that's how the cell functions. So to start with, you need a nucleic acid, and to start with, it was RNA. All right, and that was because in those times it was very hot, and RNA is thermostable. DNA is not thermostable, it is thermolabile, so it will just get denatured, but RNA is thermostable. So it probably started as an RNA, and then it did not have an infrastructure to read that RNA, and that's what a virus is. You have got a nucleic acid, you have got a cell membrane around it, but it does not have any infrastructure to read what is written in that particular genome. But as life progressed, you had a confluence of viruses and other unicellular organisms. Now, these viruses, they had to infest. these other cells so that they can replicate, right? Because they do not have any replication system within them, right? That's why the viruses attack us. Now, when a viral DNA or RNA, it's probably RNA at that point in time because it was too hot. When a viral RNA integrates into a cell, it actually goes into the genome of that particular cell. And the chances are it's going to then create errors in that particular cell itself because it is integrating within the genome of that particular cell. Now, in 1990, Human Genome Project, I think in not 1990, 2000, Human Genome Project culminated. And we now know that almost 90% of our genetic structure, what we have, they are all introns and they are actually remnants of viral infection. So viruses, they came, they integrated with our genomes, and they just stayed over there. This is the best way of surviving, in the sense your immune system won't do anything with the genome. Whenever you replicate, the virus will replicate with you. Most of these viruses have been silenced. They have been methylated. There is a methylation which has happened over there, so they are silenced. Nothing is happening. However, a lot of these viruses really contributed to who we are. So, for example, the placenta, which is formed when the baby is growing, that placenta has to latch onto the uterus. This latching of placenta onto the uterus is because of a viral mutation. It's a virus which caused it. It was not there until a virus came in and caused that mutation to happen. And that entire latching is actually very similar to how a virus invades a cell. It's beautiful how we are all interconnected. It all started somewhere, and we just forget that we are a part of that. You call it anything. I mean, Eastern philosophy calls it as a consciousness. We are all connected, and they call that connection as consciousness, whatever. But I mean, even if you look into Western medicine, we are eventually getting there. We are eventually proving the same things with different names.
Yes,
Nomenclature has changed. We use fascinating terms to explain what a lot of things were already known.
exactly. And I mean, I know we are going into the different direction, but when you said that we are giving them different names, this also reminds me of how it took us so many years to realize that the Earth is round or spherical in shape, whereas in Sanskrit we call the science of
Bhugol.
geometry bhugol, which actually means gourd, which means round, right? So many examples like this, which tells you whether it's the distance between the Earth and the Sun or the Earth and the Moon. That was also is in our ancient text that we knew it, and then now it's somehow, the credit is not given to that. We just have forgotten. uh, but I think one of the goals I have in my life, and you mentioned that book before that you read, that talk that made you realize about Guthra. I've read your amazing uh, article on it on Vice Telemus. So I would tell audience who haven't to go back and read your article on that. But I would love to read books and more books like that you mentioned to educate myself about our ancient science, right? I mean, yes, meditation, as we talked before, is a science in itself. But one of the goals I have for myself is to take me back to those books, to our rich science that we had in those olden times and connect to that. So please, I would ask you to give me a recommendation. I know you mentioned it, but if you can uh, give more recommendations like that to me, that would be super helpful.
Sure, of course. I mean, you being a part of a pharmaceutical company, you understand biology a lot. You should read Ashtanga Rhythm. It's amazing. The only problem with that book is that, or with people like us, is that at least I don't understand Sanskrit. in depth. I don't have complete knowledge of Sanskrit. So whatever I read, those are interpretations by someone who has read that particular book. So my understanding is that guy's understanding who has interpreted that book. So if that guy has made an error, I'm just copying that
Mm,
particular error, and I fear that is probably happening. The other thing is, I do not think that we have got all the scriptures from those times available. Most of them were destroyed. We have
destroyed.
just like very small, limited parts which are already left, and we hardly understand them. Uh, so I am skeptical about what I'm reading, but I get fascinated because when I have been trained in medical science, and when I see that even in that translated version of Ashtanga Hrudayam, things are so advanced. It's really mind blowing. It's really mind blowing. But anyways, I because we are in this podcast format, which is for meditation, I will keep pulling you towards meditation.
Yes.
So uh, you talk about uh, Sky Yoga, which is Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. So
Yes.
what we did was that Sudarshan Kriya Yoga.
No, what we did was a very simple guided meditation. Sky, which is Sudarshan Kriya Yoga meditation, sky breathing technique, is a rhythmic breathing technique where you breathe in three different rhythms in a certain way, and that's something that it has to be taught. You have to be initiated into it by like a qualified teacher. It takes 3 days where you take this workshop where you learn this, and then once you learn it, you can practice it on your own every day. I practice that every morning. So that is the sky breathing technique, and there's so much research that has been done on it, just like other meditation technique. Recently, a article was published in Harvard, uh, and it was a research done on Yale University on students, and it was a randomized control trial comparing sky to other meditation techniques and a placebo group, and how it showed how it helped with anxiety, depression, stress, improved sleep. In general, how Sky has helped on PTSD. So there are Sky programs that are done on veterans that come from war who have post-traumatic stress disorders, and how these breathing techniques have helped them to fight with that PTSD. It's even shown to increase your immune system. I know we talked briefly about the immune system, to decrease your blood pressure. So many amazing benefits it has. And I mean, let me just talk about myself here to share how it has helped me. I think this is where you understand how meditation is so much more than stress management. Uh, I had shared this story, I know, in earlier podcast, but I had this very jarring experience in my high school, where being an introvert, uh, I would never speak in front of a class, and then I was asked to, I gave this was decided to go up to the stage, give a speech, was not able to give that speech, and that made me more introverted. I was always worried about what other people will think. I'd created a wall around me uh, of others' judgment, and that stopped me. It was like killing me inside to to share what I wanted to share. And at that point in time, it was meditation and the regular practice of this sky breathing technique that my mom, introduced me to, that sort of broke that wall that I'd created down. I got that inner confidence and that inner courage that, I have meaningful things to share. And I was able to come out of my comfort zone and do that. And meditation had such a huge role to play for me to be able to do that. So it had such a different impact on my life, apart from what it helped me to deal with everyday stress and other things that I felt I want to share this. And I during COVID time is when I started to do meditation workshops at my university. I did 4 workshops, and I collaborated with Art of Living organization and called a meditation teacher to come and do a guided meditation session for 30 minutes. We had 500 students participate over those 4 workshops at the university,
Wow.
and the response I got from students was overwhelming. It was so stressful time, uh, especially schools going virtual, and everyone said how much they loved this, how much it helped them to cope with all these changes in their life, internal stress as well as external, because the social environment dynamics that was happening during that time. Uh, that made me realize that, made me so grateful, and I felt I want to do this. And that's what led me to a journey of pursuing uh, a meditation teacher course training, and then finally becoming a meditation teacher last year and now teaching them.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's been a journey, and as I said, I've just been teaching for a year now. But every time after the end of that 3-day course, uh, recently had a course at Northeastern University where I teach students, or whether I'm doing virtual courses. The first day when anyone who comes, and then the difference that I observe at the last day of the workshop, that smile on their face, uh, is I think that's the most satisfying thing. Uh, that that I get that satisfaction by seeing them so happy, that natural genuine smile. It's not like they're smiling from their face but from their heart. uh,
Wow.
and I think that's what meditation is, right? It's your inner happiness, your inner state, which is happiness and love that blossoms within you, and that is what meditation helps you to do. So yeah, I mean, I would I would say this what we did was just a glimpse of it's the tip of the iceberg of what the sky breath meditation is.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. I also keep hearing about a lot of powers that you can gain through meditation. I'll try to explain what I mean. And there are these proven or examples which have been proven using Western scientific methods. So these are not blind things or stories. It has actually happened. So there are Tibetan monks who meditate very deeply. They are able to control their heart rate. They are able to control their body temperature. They are able to increase their body temperature. They can kind of boil water in their hands or something. And it has been tested. If you go to internet, if you check for the videos, you will find those videos. You will find the stories where scientists actually went over there to check if this is really happening, and it really happened. And then we know, at least in the Kailash mountains, you have got these yogis who meditate for years without wearing a single piece of cloth on their body. And for a lot of people who might be hearing, Mount Kailash is like the temperatures are always in minus. It's always freezing cold over there. How do you do all these things? And then when I read a lot about these things, I realized that it again goes back to the same philosophy what we discussed, where we said that when you're meditating, you are gaining access to information that you did not have, right? You had information which your conscious mind has, and then with meditation, you are getting access to the information stored in the subconscious. Similarly, if you take meditation, it seems from these examples that if you take meditation to higher levels, with conscious brain, you are able to control your voluntary muscles. But as you gain control over the subconscious brain with meditation, you start gaining control over involuntary muscles. It's similar to the thoughts. the conscious thoughts and the subconscious thoughts, the conscious or the voluntary muscles, and now the involuntary muscles. So you can control your heart, you can control your skin, so the blood flow of the skin can be then tampered, and then you can increase the temperature of the skin, which then explains what the Tibetan monks are able to do. It's I mean it's the same philosophy, and it's
It's
amazing.
I recently read, and this is so crazy, you just mentioned about the Tibet. Was it a Tibetan monk? I think it was a Tibetan monk that was discovered who was sitting in samadhi for, I think, more than hundreds of years, and they discovered like him itself, but since he was sitting in that position and went into samadhi, he was sort of uh, what got fortified or calcified into that form. And when the scientists are now like he's kept in a museum, but they say that he might still be alive. So it's crazy how much going into that state uh, can you can change how I don't know, you get those certain powers, but not only the powers that you get, it's how you can control every subtle aspect of your body, uh, and where you can reach. I think that's when we call people who've got enlightenment
Yeah,
through attaining that samadhi state, and who are able to, that's why we sort of worship people who have got enlightened, because they have access. They see things that we are not able to see. Uh, they perceive things that we are not able to perceive. So yeah, I mean, there's so much into this, and
yeah. It's a bit counterintuitive though. If you read deeply in these texts, the whole idea of whatever they do is to go away from the sensory organs, because as per them or as per these texts, the sensory organs are limiting them to the earthly dimensions. They cannot go beyond the existing dimensions so long as they are limited with the senses. So they try to destroy all the senses. First they gain command over all the senses, and then they try destroying it. They go beyond the senses. uh, I don't know how to again explain this. I mean, most of these stuff what we talk today are so, what do you say? I don't have words to really come up in a right fashion to explain this phenomena, but it's amazing in the sense. Uh, so your whatever your brain is sensing, those senses are happening because of the sensory organs, right? The touch, the smell, the sound or whatever. Yeah, all these sensory organs, those sensations are coming, and then they are throwing electrical signals into your brain, and that's how the brain is perceiving. Unfortunately, the world is full of vibrations beyond these what our sensory organs can catch. So, for example, you cannot see ultraviolet rays, you cannot see infrared radiations, you cannot hear ultrasonic sounds, you cannot hear supersonic sounds, right? Our sensory organs are not capable of understanding things beyond certain limits. How do you go beyond these limits? And that's what most of these enlightened ones try to do. They try to destroy the existing limitations completely. They completely overpower the sensory organs. They go much beyond what the brain can really sense. And that's why they say that knowledge is inhibitory, because that becomes your shell. You think from that those what do you say, limitations. You limit yourself when you go with the idea of knowledge. When you go with the idea of ignorance, you explode. So that's
ignorance
why, was there,
ignorance is bliss.
ignorance is actually the bliss. Ignorance
Yes.
is actually the bliss. Anyways, I do not know. I'm just telling what I read, and those are again interpreted by someone else. So maybe what I'm saying is complete bullshit, but It's a lot of things what I see actually makes sense. So I don't know. I mean, and meditation is actually one of the powerful techniques what most of these people use to reach those
Yes.
dimensions. What these texts say is, without meditation, you cannot reach those realms. It's impossible.
Oh my God, this has been wonderful. I mean, the amount of stuff I got to share, I mean, my experience with this, but what I've learned by having just this conversation from you and to be able to make those connections, uh, this has been wonderful, Subir. I think there's so much I take away from this conversation, which will help me understand uh, more of the experiences that I am having, and not only that, I feel I now get that inner, curiosity to know more that's out there, and to understand this more, reading those ancient texts. So I'm so thankful to you for having this conversation with
No, no,
me.
no. I am thankful to you, honestly. See, I'm just reading some text and blurting out something from those texts, right? But experiencing or doing is more important than just reading. That's what I sincerely believe. And you are somebody who is meditating daily. I'm not. So I might be regurgitating a lot of these externally derived knowledge, but I think what I really need to do is start meditating as you have been doing. So this has been a real inspiration. This conversation has been a real inspiration for me so that I can start meditating daily in a disciplined way. And um, I was observing myself in today's conversation, what we had, and I realized that generally I am decently vocal in terms of what I want to explain. But today there were so many things I wanted to say that I was failing in using the right words. And I really do not know that even in future I would be able to use the right words to explain the concepts which I wanted to explain today. But uh, I think even if we are not able to find an end to this conversation from the podcast perspective, we should halt somewhere.
Yes.
And I think this is where we can take that halting point.
No, I agree.
So
Otherwise, we can
yeah,
keep going, but we should come back and do, I feel, another episode and now deep dive more. I think I loved what we mentioned about correlations between Eastern and Western philosophies, and
yeah.
maybe take it to the next step talking about that. But a topic for another day. I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, we did cover a lot, and I think the takeaway for the audience from this particular podcast is all about meditation. To be honest, irrespective of what you think about meditation, what your understanding is about meditation, doesn't really matter. Take the leap, start meditating. Uh, it's one of the fantastic ways of combating stress. It's one of the fantastic ways of enriching your experience with life. Yeah, there are a lot of these mystical things what we talked about meditation. But if you don't want to believe those things, it's perfectly fine. But please meditate. You will have a more enriching experience with your present. You will be more in terms with your past, and you will stop worrying about the future. And that's what meditation will do to you. And with this, I would also invite everyone to approach Rohan, see what he does, uh, join him in his classes where he teaches the sky meditation, which is Sudarshan Kriya yoga meditation. And with this, let me end today's podcast. And I'm thankful to Rohan for helping me understand deeply about meditation and pushing me to adopt meditation from today onwards.
Yes, I think if the outcome of this podcast is getting you back to meditation, and whoever is hearing one person started, I think we made a positive impact.